Bad Brad Berkwitt Show is all about moving humanity forward and fighting for democracy. And remember, folks, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Hey, folks, the man with the pinky ring and the New York thing. Forget about it. Bad Brad Berkwitt. And welcome to the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Forget about it. My special guest today I met 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C. when Vote Vets, a fantastic organization, flew me in from Indiana to join my brother and sister veterans in a protest at the U.S. Capitol against the Republican Party who withheld aid to Ukraine in the 45-day CR passed recently to keep the government open. One of those veterans was retired Army Colonel Sheri Swokowski. We had some great conversations that led to me wanting to bring her on my show today for a 360 conversation. Because she is so accomplished and impressive, I'm going to read her bio in full before I bring her on today. Dr. Sheri Swokowski is a retired Army Colonel with 35 years of service. She is the senior out transgender veteran in the United States. Colonel Swokowski holds a PhD in leadership for the application of learning and service from Cardinal Stretch University and a master's degree in management and organizational behavior. She is a graduate of the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and the Army War College Strategic Defense Strategy course, COL, Pennsylvania. Sheri is a career infantry officer, has commanded a light infantry company, deployed twice, served on a battalion, brigade, state, and department level staffs. She retired in December 2004 as the J1 Director of Manpower and Personnel for the Wisconsin National Guard. Post-retirement, Dr. Swokowski was a lead course instructor at the U.S. Army Force Management School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I used to go there all the time, where she was abruptly fired in 2007 when she transitioned. She went on to serve as a senior analyst for the Assistant Chief of Staff for Installation Management at the Pentagon and as a regional human resource director for the U.S. Forest Service in Golden, Colorado. She is internationally known for her transgender rights and trans military service. She played a role in influencing the Department of Defense to acknowledge and recognize they had service members still serving in silence 5 years after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. She has keynoted both military and civilian pride events across the country. In 2015, the Department of Defense recognized her as the first female infantry officer among the ranks when they corrected her DD 214 to reflect her authenticity. Dr. Swokowski has been featured on CNN, MSNBC, Headline News, and Al Jazeera. She has been published in the Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, Huffington Post, and Washington Blade. She has presented at the Gay and Lesbian Medical Association and World Professional Association for Transgender Health annual conferences. She currently serves on the Advocacy Advisory Council for the Modern Military Association of America and on the board of directors for the ACLU Wisconsin chapter. Long bio, right? Accomplished, right? Many things. And she is, as I said earlier, my special guest. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to my show, the one and only Sheri Swokowski. Well, first of all, Sheri, good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Looking forward to talking today. I always start out my 360 conversations like this. If I have anything wrong in my notes, because we know the internet is not always correct, feel free to say, hey, Brad, it's actually this. But I want to add a caveat today because there's going to be a lot of information that we're going to talk about because I'm into dispelling misinformation. So if I ask a question and I'm not asking it the right way, there's no egos on this show. So if you say, hey, Brad, I think what you're asking is this, feel free to correct me. I'm not offended one bit. Okay.
Sounds great.
All right. So we're going to start at the beginning. And I'm probably going to mess up saying this city, but you were born and raised in, do you say Manitowoc?
Manitowoc.
Manitowoc, okay.
Yes.
Which is a city in Wisconsin located on Lake Michigan at the mouth of the Manitowoc River. Now, according to the 2020 census, it had a population of about 34,626. So obviously not a big area, but probably a lot smaller when you grew up there, I would assume, if people moved into the area. But either way, talk about growing up there.
Yes. Well, Manitowoc surprisingly hasn't grown much, if at all. And that may be due to the economics and the industry that departed. There were 33,000 people there when I was living there. I've been gone for about 50 years, and there's still about 33 or 34,000. So I was born into a family that was very close-knit. There were 4 kids. Parents thought originally there were 3 boys and 1 girl, but as it turned out, there were actually 2 of each. Manitowoc is a small community, very conservative, very Catholic, and I attended a Catholic grade school in grades 1 through 6 before I went to the public junior high school there. And I always knew there was something different about me. About the age of 5, I just felt I should be wearing my sister, who was 2 years younger, I should be wearing her clothes. And at times later on, when I was a little older, and I found myself alone at home, that's exactly what I did. And it was, everything just seemed to click when I did that. And so I knew, didn't have a name for it, but knew there was something different about me and that my body did not align with my identity. So that was something that I dealt with, and the way I dealt with it really throughout my entire life until the time I transitioned was by suppressing those feelings very, very deeply. So that the behaviors that I wanted to exhibit were not what was expected of a boy. And now we're talking back in the 50s and 60s. And back then, there was no word for transgender. In fact, I was in the military and was probably 27 years old, I think it was, before I heard of other people like me. And in this particular case, it was Renee Richards. And if you don't know the name, she was a trans woman from New York. Played some professional tennis, was rather good at it. And so by the time I was in my mid-20s, I finally found out that there were other people like me.
Okay. It looks like you joined the Army in 1970. Is that correct?
That is exactly right. I had the best of both worlds. I joined the Army National Guard in a neighboring city, infantry unit. I was an 11 Charlie initially, a mortar crewman, and then shortly thereafter, I want to say 3 years later, not even 3 years, I made that my vocation. So I became a federal civil servant. Wore the uniform daily for 13 years as a federal civil servant, and then was offered the opportunity to go on active duty in support of the Guard. And I did that, was able to get 20 years active service in, which included a 2-year stint as a commander of a light infantry company here in Wisconsin. And I won't go into that name, but because it's a little harder than Manitowoc to pronounce. It's actually Oconomowoc.
Okay.
That's where the infantry unit was.
Okay. Out of curiosity, when you're talking about growing up, did you grow up in a Republican family or Democratic family?
I think it was mainly Democratic family. My parents, my dad, who has his own World War II story, and I really should share that with you, but My dad was worked for Wisconsin Bell back at the time, Wisconsin Telephone Company, as a repair lineman, did jack of all trades. And my mother worked part-time as a nurse's aide until she was, gosh, in her late 40s, and she decided to go to school and get her license and continued working as a nurse. But my dad's story is really what got my interest in the military. He was, during World War II, he was deferred from serving because he was installing the communication systems on the 28 submarines that we built in Manitowoc for the Navy during the last 2 years of the war. He nonetheless enlisted in I want to say the summer of '44, sent to Camp Landing, Florida for training, and headed east over to the European Theater of Operations in late November of 1944. And he got there and was soon involved, and they had a little skirmish going on called the Battle of the Bulge. It started in the middle of December. And my dad never talked about the war. I asked him one question one time. That was, what happened to your unit? And his reply was, well, half of us were killed and half were captured. And so I always thought that my dad was captured during the start of the Battle of the Bulge, somewhere in mid-December. And I have done some research and found some books that were a very telling book that was written by the nephew of one of his platoon mates that was actually killed during the same battle that my dad was captured in. And that book revealed to me that my dad was actually captured on January 28th of 1945, which officially was 2 days after the Battle of the Bulge terminated, or that operation terminated, as the Allies were getting close to getting into Germany. My dad was captured outside of a little town in Luxembourg called Puttscheid. And that's where the details were of the battle, where half of the unit was captured and half were killed. My dad was evacuated to Stalag 9B in Bad Orb, Germany, and was a prisoner of war until April 1st, which happened to be Easter Sunday. And that morning, Stalag 9B held tens of thousands of prisoners during its time in the war. I don't have a solid figure how many were still in captivity then on April 1st of '45. But that morning, the Germans got all of the Allied prisoners out of their barracks and lined them up in a field and placed machine guns in front of them. And before they could execute the prisoners, another German guard came running up to the machine gun crews and told them that the American tanks were coming through the front gate. And reason to believe that these were tanks out of the Illinois National Guard, the 106th Cavalry organization. And for that reason, I'm lucky to be here at all. And like I said, my dad never talked much about the war, and the only reason I know that particular story is when he came back to the States. He and my mother lived with my older brother at my grandmother's house, and my grandmother overheard the story of my dad telling that story to another individual, a friend of his, over the phone.
Wow.
So
that's wow. That's something. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very interesting story. Just if the tanks wouldn't have come through, that would have been it. Wow.
Exactly. Exactly. And it was, part of Patton's Third Army. But, I'm glad they had the logistics chain that they did to allow them to continue to keep pushing forwards, because they knew prisoners were being held in camps.
Absolutely. I want to read something that we'll talk about on the other side. Before I brought you on today, I read your very impressive bio and credentials for my viewers. I know you have a PhD in leadership for the application of learning and service from Cardinal Stretch University and a master's degree in management and organizational behavior. Is that correct so far?
exactly. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, question, did you obtain those during your military service or did you get those after? Because I know you retired in 04, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I kind of split the difference. I got my bachelor's and my master's using some of the benefits that were available to military members.
Okay.
And I actually used my post 9/11 GI Bill because my doctoral degree was 2017 to 2020, so rather recently. And almost waited too long. And I have to encourage veterans that are out there, if you're thinking about going back to school, make sure you get in. I think there's a 15-year limit on use of the benefits. I know that my course was 9 semesters long, and the GI Bill paid for 7 of them before it expired.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, like you said, you went when you were much older at that point. Did you go on campus or did you do extended learning or what did you do?
It was all residence course.
Okay.
And it was really well put together. Sorry to say that Cardinal Stritch closed its doors earlier this year. In May was her last graduating class. But it was tailored to the professional, the people with families and kids, in that it meant 1 weekend a month for 2.5 days.
Okay. A talking point I want to hit on, one of the first ones, is Vote Vets. We both met because of the wonderful veteran organization 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C., when we marched up to the Capitol and protested to them about the funding for the Ukraine that they didn't put into the 45-day CR that recently passed. And as we know, it's coming up here in a couple of weeks again. What I want to ask you off of that talking point is, when did you first become aware of Vote Vets? And was that your first event that you attended?
So I became aware of Vote Vets a couple, maybe 3 years ago. I had some communication and some invitation to attend a local, a semi-local event here in Wisconsin, but wasn't able to make it. And the trip to Washington, D.C. was in fact my first event that I attended with Vote Vets. And I have to tell you, I was very impressed with the people, with the passion that's exhibited, the knowledge, and just a concern about doing the right thing, which sometimes in this country seems pretty hard to come by for some people.
I agree. Okay. The next talk point, I want to read something that's a little bit lengthy, but we're going to talk quite a bit about it, and that's the LGBTQ plus community. But I want to read something for my viewers and put it out there, and then we'll go into some questions and talking points. I want to say something that I've said many times on my show and on an LGBTQ plus panel I put together on kids. I will personally never tell someone what to think when it comes to the LGBT community, but I will always try to bring information to people you can talk to who are aware of who are willing to listen. With that said, what I will not tolerate in my presence or being made aware of treating anyone in the community less than a human being because you don't like a lifestyle. I will and have used my Twitter platform and show to call out those who have bullied people in the community. And I always, as my father did decades before me, when he took on Anita Bryant, it wasn't called the LGBTQ, it was a gay and lesbian community. And he took her on Miami Beach. You saw the clip that I sent you. And he didn't tolerate it. So nobody has the right to treat somebody less than. I can't tell someone how to think, but you don't get, and for me personally, you don't get to treat any person less than because you don't like something or you don't understand it. So that's where I want to go into several talking points, and a lot of it is your expertise, because I know I believe you said you did what was your thesis on, Sheri?
My dissertation was on the barriers to care that our active duty service members were encountering, and to a large degree still are encountering while they're seeking gender reassignment surgery.
Okay. What I want to start out with is to dispel some of this information where people constantly flood, especially on social media, the complete opposite. You transitioned, if I read correctly, in 2017. Was that correct?
No, I transitioned as quickly as I could after retiring. And so that was started in 2005 and actually made the decision to go public in 2007.
Oh, okay. What did you have to go through to transition something that for decades, and you talked about Renee Richards, back in the day, and correct me if I'm wrong, you'd have to go to like other, I don't know if it was Sweden, but you had to go to like other countries to have surgery and stuff done. And from what I recall, you never saw that much in the States. Is that right or wrong?
Well, even back in 2007, when I made the decision, and this is something that you don't do with a cursory or even a tertiary look. I mean, this talking about research. Back then, a couple of things happened that prompted me to go forward. And one was that when I retired, I was retired for about 18 months, about 2 golf seasons, and realizing I wasn't going to make any money that way, I decided to go back to work. And of course, with my skill sets, the basic areas for using my skill sets were the Washington, D.C. area. So I applied for and was hired as a government contractor initially by MPRI, Military Professional Resources Incorporated. I think it stood for, it was a subsidiary of L3 Communications. And I was a lead instructor at the Army's Force Management School. That's a lot of my background, strategic planning, force management. And it was there I decided to move forward. And part of the reason was because in Washington, D.C., I found a very welcoming community. And there were about 10 or 12 of us, late bloomers, I guess you could call us, that all worked together, didn't work together, but we worked together at researching and socializing. And part of it was talking about medical things. And so I moved forward very shortly thereafter and had my second surgery in 2008. And that was done here in the States. There were a number of providers between the US and I think it was Toronto, that doctors that had been practicing for 10 and 15 years in doing surgeries. So I was very pleased to work with a doctor out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Wonderful guy, great friend, continued our relationship since 2008. And that was one of the surgeries. The other one I had was, actually it was 2007. And that was by a local plastic surgeon in the greater Chicago area here that does some remarkable things with facial features. And that was, all of it was, my medical care was here. Now, when I started back then, it was a little bit difficult. The standards of care that the World Professional Association for Transgender Health has indicates that there's some certain amount of counseling that's done, behavioral health or mental health, not just from one, but from a couple. So I was fortunate that I had one here in Wisconsin. It was very hard to find. I had to travel over to Milwaukee to get that mental health counseling. And the second one was in the Washington, D.C. area, which was very helpful because before you have any irreversible surgeries, all of the, again, this is a standards of care issue, and you need letters from 2 behavioral health or mental health professionals. The surgeon required those before they would go ahead with any of the surgeries.
Okay. Out of curiosity, does TRICARE, I would assume I'm TRICARE for life, being retired. I don't know if I would assume you're TRICARE. Does TRICARE cover? Do you have to use private insurance, or how does that work?
So I'm really unsure of that. I can tell you that from the evidence-based research that I did for my dissertation, that the active duty service members today were prohibited from using DoD funds. So there is a whole process that they go through that is much too long and should be streamlined. But they end up using TRICARE, supplemental health care plan from TRICARE for reassignment surgeries. And that's something that the Defense Health Agency in the DC area and DoD have implemented when the transgender ban in the military was reversed back on June 30th, 2016 by Secretary Ash Carter.
Okay. There's a story. I know the story, but I'd like you to tell it for the viewers. You picked the name Sheri for a reason. Tell the viewers why you picked that name.
Yes, I did. It was, I was married at the time, and my wife, I have to give her credit. She was supportive up until the end when she wasn't. But we would go out together. She attended several regional transgender conferences with me. The closest ones were in Chicago, and we had a couple of names that we were going back and forth with. And she said, you're a Sheri if I ever saw one. And so she helped me out with that, and I had the opportunity then to craft the rest of it myself. So the way I tell folks, a lot of trans people and LGBT and allies talk about use of pronouns. And they say, well, my pronouns are he, him, and his, or she and her. And when they ask me, I just point them to the spelling of my first name. It's Sheri, and she and her are there. And I also have the I on the end, so we're all wrapped tightly together.
There you go.
Just seems like a logical thing to do.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Next couple of questions I want to ask you are more. When I was thinking of the question, I was trying not to ask the same question just because I know I did a lot of research on a lot of clips. Didn't want to ask the same questions. I want to educate people. So let me start out with this one. You have men who transition to women, and of course, women who transition to men. But I'm curious because just because someone transitions to a woman or a woman transitions to a man doesn't mean that they're attracted to the same. If you transition to a man, that you're attracted to men, or if you transition to a woman, that you're attracted to women. And I was curious, is there stats on that? Because it's not people that are small-minded, they think just, it's this one way, but it's really not. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. And, there's no, I always say the only thing that trans people have in common is the uniqueness of their journey. And there's a distinct difference between gender identity, your sense of who you will know yourself to be, and your sexual orientation. And for some trans people, it doesn't change. In my case, I was attracted to women, and I was a woman. I've been a woman for my entire life, and I just had the opportunity to align my exterior with my interior. So I've been lesbian. I know other folks that have been married to other trans women that have been married to females that dated males, serious relationships, married them. But I also know other trans women that after doing that went back and married females. And the trans community is so small that there's a lot of trans relationships, because who better to understand where you are, what you've been through, and what you're going through than someone else who is trans. So the marriages of trans people and cisgender people is I don't know, I would hesitate to put a percentage on that, but it's much smaller than trans people marrying each other.
Okay, The other question, and you brought this up, you have children. You were married. You have kids, which I read in your bio. When you transition to a woman, and you said your wife, your ex-wife, how is it explained, or how does it work? Like now you have two moms or two dads, depending on what you transition into. How does that work, or is there any information on that?
Well, I don't think there's any studies, if you will. I mean, it's same thing with a gay couple, lesbian couple. It's very similar. It's just the makeup of the individual's identities that are a little bit different. I can tell you that my kids, both of them, I have a daughter and a son, and both of them felt shortly after seeing me and spending time with me that I was so much better of a person. And some of that could have been, I masqueraded pretty successfully for 50 plus years as a male. And some of that, when that persona was gone, when that exterior was gone, the more genuine part of me started to come out, and that was very noticeable to my kids. And I have 6 grandkids, and they've never known anyone other than Sheri. So it's a pretty nice thing.
Okay. In June of 2016, President Obama lifted the ban on transgender members openly serving. In April of 2019, Donald Trump took to Twitter, if I recall correctly, saying he was reinstating the ban, which pissed off then SecDef retired General James Mattis. Is that correct so far?
The date that Trump issued his tweets was July of 2017.
Okay, 17.
No,
okay.
Yeah.
So 2 years later, in April, is that when he rescinded the ban?
It was July of 2017, and what happened, what generated that action was the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, was being bantered about in Congress as it usually does. And there was a senator from Missouri, or representative from Missouri, by the name of Vicky Hartzler, who attached an amendment to the NDAA that re-implemented the trans military ban. And she was pressured by a number of folks and finally withdrew that, but then substituted another amendment that would take away medically necessary care from active duty and reserve component service members and their transgender dependents. And that's when Secretary Mattis, who didn't know anything about the tweets, which were coming 2 weeks later, but he got on the phone and called a couple dozen, at least a score to a couple dozen of Republican representatives and said, I don't support this, I don't want this, please don't do this. And he was persuasive enough, as I think it was Mad Dog Mattis, I think was the nickname.
Yep, Mad Dog.
Could be. And he was persuasive enough that the amendment came up for a vote, and it was defeated by 4 or 5 votes. So it was about 2 weeks later that Trump tweeted this, or maybe just a week later, that transgender service members would not be allowed to serve in any capacity in the military, or transgender individuals. And that was immediately hit with 4 lawsuits by 4 different organizations, which put everything into limbo really until 2019, when the cases came up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that the ban could be implemented because they didn't consider it to be a ban, because transgender individuals could serve in the military in the sex they were assigned at birth. And well, yeah, but I use myself as an example that during my years in the military, I probably did a couple of things well to earn promotions to the 06 level. And I often wonder, looking back at it, had I been allowed to serve authentically without that weight on my shoulders, how much better a leader I could have been, how much more I could have done for my subordinates to make them successful. Just a variety of things, and yet to be an all-around better person.
Okay. I know I'm watching clips on you for the show. I know something you have passionately fought to keep in place, them not reversing it because it changes during each, administration can change it. So I know it's one of your things that you fight for. What can be done where nobody can touch it anymore if it's set in place and that's it? Or can anything be done to make it set in place?
Yes. So and this was brought up in 2020. There was a movement afoot to actually codify the rights of transgender individuals to serve in the military, to put that into law. And it met with a little bit of discussion, but it really never went anywhere. So we are in the same place we were back in 2017 right now, that it's dependent upon the incumbent of the Commander-in-Chief office that could change things again.
Okay.
Depending on who that is.
One of our conversation we had in DC, you broke it down for me. I want you to tell the viewers for each service what the amount of time was, and I know some are better than others. Could you go into that?
Yeah, this goes back to my dissertation and the sex reassignment surgery. So the process is very elongated, if you will, and there were two separate waivers that trans service members required. Well, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of separate requirements that trans people have that anybody else having medical care on active duty doesn't have those hoops to jump through. So trans people have to get their treatment plan approved by their chain of command. The time, they can't really disapprove it, but they can schedule the time when it's in the best interest of the unit, which of course is first and foremost what most transgender people want to begin with. They're in the military for a reason. And that reason isn't to have surgery, it's to serve the country. So back in 2017 to 2020, the comments were that the requirements were that in order to get this waiver for surgery, you first had to get a waiver for surgery consult. And the surgery consults, I mean, there's still a lot, even though the policy is what it is, there's still a lot of bias in the system. People are throwing anchors out there for whatever the reason. I'm not sure why that would be. If they don't have an MD or a PhD, there shouldn't, in my perception, they shouldn't have anything to do with special healthcare. It should be just like everybody else's healthcare. But for getting the surgery waivers, just took an inordinate amount of time. For the Navy and Marine Corps, the average time from the time the waiver was submitted until the time it was approved was 13 months. The Air Force has a better thing going, like they do sometimes. They seem to be a little bit more, I won't say caring, but considerate of people's needs. And they had their time cut down to 4 months. So that's reasonable. The Army, on the other hand, with the most trans people, just by virtue of the population, took over 20 months. And it forced several Army people, and I now know of Navy people, that instead of waiting for the surgery to do it according to the book, if you will, that they just went ahead, took a 30-day block of leave, had the surgery, told the physicians to send the bill to them. So they're incurring 5-figure costs on their own because of the process is so bogged down. And it needs to get better. So one of the things I was glad to hear about 18 months ago was the fact that they're now only doing one waiver. There's no longer a requirement to get a waiver for a surgical consult.
How long is the Marine Corps?
The Marine Corps was in the was considered as part of the Navy. I don't have the specifics for you, but yes. Okay.
Sheri, when you see, for example, Caitlyn Jenner, and I think that she sells out the community with her rhetoric, and it aligns herself with MAGA, and MAGA doesn't care about the LGBTQ, and neither does Donald Trump. I don't care what he says every once in a while. When you see that, people like her, what goes through your mind?
Wow. At first, I was very happy for her because she understood. She brought up a lot of visibility about the trans community to the public eye, if you will. But she seems to have, how should I say this? Her Republican perspectives seem to have overtaken any of the joy, any of the progress that her visibility about being trans may have brought out. So very disappointed that she feels that trans kids should not be allowed to play sports. You can go up and down the list of whatever she says lately. It's so much based on political. I'm not sure if she's trying to build a base of her own, or if she's proffering for a spot and I shouldn't laugh because it's certainly possible in a spot in the Trump White House, but she certainly isn't representative of any of the trans people I know. Oh, I have to take that back. There is one exception with Chief Beck,
Navy SEAL, right?
Yes, who's had a similar. Well, Chief is a little bit different. I think the Chief is actually detransitioned. Yeah, so there's two folks out there that could be extremely helpful for visibility purposes and were for a short period of time. And now they're the ones that are out there saying how wrong it is to have trans kids playing sports. And I know from reading I've met Chief Beck several times and supported her early on. And she's had a rough road to hoe, so to speak, but there isn't any excuse now to come out against trans healthcare or gender affirming care for trans kids like she has.
Okay. Two more talking points on this topic. You had some stats. I want to talk, and you mentioned it, trans athletes. The Republican Party has grabbed hold of that, like Nikki Haley, and they got in front of the podium and ran with it. And just they throwing red meat to their base, because this is just what it's really not a winner for them, but they don't care anymore. What's a winner for them? Talk, if you would, about trans athletes, because you know that what they flood the space with is, well, if somebody was born a male and they become a female, they have advantages, and they run with it completely. And realistically, from what I've seen, and it's more your wheelhouse, because I know you got some stats, it's a very small percentage, but they're making it look like it's a huge number, and it's not, because that's what the Republicans do, especially this current crop of contenders for the presidency, or for the Republican nomination, I should say. But what stats did you have that you can share?
Sure. So the first part of this is not going to be stats. It's going to be my own observations. And I'm going to divide this into two different areas, or two different ages. So one is the pre-puberty ages. So from early on, from birth until 12 or 13. The difference that I've noticed between males and females is hardly discernible. The body shapes, the forms, especially in the pre-puberty folks, there's not a lot of difference. Now, there's always variations. I mean, there's variations with Michael Phelps having a 6-foot wingspan, and some other physical attributes as a male. But the more concern, I guess, as children age and do get more muscular, is because in the case of males, they have more testosterone developing in their bodies, whereas females have estrogen. And there could be something to that. Now, how many people compete in how many trans people compete in sports? Maybe the question is, how many trans people have won significant awards or medals? Leah Thomas, I believe is the last name, at the Penn State University, is a trans woman who has won a couple of titles. She has also been beaten by the people that she beat up for the title. So there's no real consistency there. And the other, short story about one of the speaking engagements I did was with the Rotary Club here in Madison a couple of years ago. And we talked about trans athletes and took questions at the end. And one of the members was sure to talking about Leah Thomas. And I said, well, you asked me a question. I said, well, I don't know what her surgery status is. You know, that's not my guy. Well, I can tell you, she hasn't had surgery, you know. And of course, surgery being a big part of the bottom surgery being a big part of it, because your testosterone is removed. And so afterwards, I'm around and I'm congratulating some of the other folks that were there for awards, service awards that they got. And one of the gals was older gal, just said, well, I'm not certain, you know, that I don't believe that, you know, I'm not convinced. And I said, well, there's never been, you know, I said, asked her, have you ever heard of a woman winning an Olympic medal? She said, oh, sure. I don't know the name, but yeah, there's a gal. And I said, are you talking about Castor Semenya of South Africa, I think it is. And she's a cisgender girl who has abnormally high testosterone, just from, you know, part of biology. I'm talking about biology. And I said, well, she just has, you know, unusually high. And she said, oh, I don't believe that. And it was who I was talking to, I didn't realize at the time, was Olympic speed skater, gold medalist speed skater Eric Heiden's mother. And so she wasn't convinced at all. But let's talk about the numbers a little bit. I think in Wisconsin, they've come up with 6 trans people playing sports out of, I don't know how many, but certainly tens of thousands of kids. There's no concern about trans men playing sports. It's all about trans girls. And just recently, while we were in DC, the state assembly here had open hearings, short notice open hearings about on 3 bills, and 2 of them were to prohibit trans women from participating in K through 12 and college sports, and the other one was about banning transgender care for minors in its entirety. And so those 3 bills all passed last week. And last week, the Senate took up their bill on gender affirming care on Thursday. And I was sitting in the audience, waited about 6 hours for 3 minutes of testimony. And I was just astonished by the misinformation that was put out by the bill's sponsors. And so the bill sponsor cited that in trans youth, that the majority of trans youth change their mind when they become adults. And the actual data show that the percent of trans youth that continue on in transition as adults is 98%. I mean, so it's quite clear. And so So the individual that was claiming that more than half changed their minds was asked by one of the committee members where that data came from. And of course, he couldn't cite it. I was prepared to cite the 2013 to 2017 study that took place in 40 states and 2 Canadian provinces that basically said there's only 2% that change. And strangely enough, 2% may very well change back or change their mind, but there's no discussion about why they changed their mind. And certainly all of the societal stuff that they see going on in the trans community can be part of that. So anyway, getting back to your original question, that's the information that I have. I would think that using myself as an example, I have no testosterone in my body at all. Every cisgender female has more testosterone in their body from their ovaries than I have in mine. And I have had muscle loss and all of the things that, there's a reason that the sporting organizations say, well, you have to be on testosterone blockers for at least a year to get down into the female range, if you will. Well, that's a big part of it. So I'm thinking that for the folks that vote in support of banning trans kids from trans sports, they should probably vote in favor of gender affirming care for trans kids, because when you start taking puberty blockers and later on hormones, that's stuff that lowers testosterone in males. So, but they don't talk about that.
No, of course not. No.
Yes.
It doesn't fit their narrative, Sheri. They don't want that out there.
Exactly. So the older folks that, if they're on hormones, or younger folks on puberty blockers, I don't see that as being a big difference from where they are. And I'm sure that maybe there are some folks that are trying to beat the system and not taking hormones. But that's a medical thing, and that's between the doctors, and there's a way to find out if what their testosterone levels are, or what have you, if it's so important.
Okay.
But it's pretty much an invasion of privacy.
Okay. The last thing I want to ask you on that talking point is there anything that you feel that the LGBTQ plus community could do better in education or whatever, in any regard that they could do better?
It's been my experience, and it's not been widespread, but I've had a couple conversations with members of the community that are just as ignorant of the facts about trans people as the general public. And it's basically they're in need of as much education as the public is. Now, maybe it's party affiliation, maybe it's faith-based, I don't know what, but it's hard to have conversations with people who have preconceived ideas. I went to my 50th high school class reunion. I was at the 45th, and at the 50th, as I'm going to the dinner table, actually being stalked by a couple that was looking for me, unbeknownst to me at the time. But the gal said, "No, would you mind? I have a couple of questions because I'm Catholic." And you're never going to win one of those arguments. If you want to talk about lived experiences and the science behind it, and why the medical organizations, virtually all of them worldwide, support gender affirming care because of its benefits, I'm happy to have that discussion. But I can't have a discussion based on faith.
Okay. The last talking point, I want to read something, and this is military. I'll read it, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. I saw a clip on you. For years, you said in a clip I saw in researching you that you had to, of course, based on military policies, keep your identity a secret. We both did careers, and obviously we love being in the military. We would have not stayed for a career. But with that said, we both know there was and still is some degree of discrimination or what I endured racism because I was in an interracial relationship, and I was stationed in Pensacola, which is lower Alabama, the folks watching this show. And I had some redneck officers that told me, well, you know what? You shouldn't have married a black woman. And I respectfully told them, you don't tell me what to do, sir. You know, and they didn't push it too far, but it was back in the day. And if they would have, I probably would have lost, and I probably would have gotten in trouble for being told I was being disrespectful, which I wasn't. I just wasn't going to tolerate someone telling me who to marry. But with that said, we talked earlier, you came in 1970, you had the Vietnam War going on. How prevalent when now I know you said you did federal, but then you went on active duty. But at that point, when you went on active duty, how prevalent was homophobia in the military that you would see? And obviously it was a different time, and you couldn't, maybe do some of the things that you can do now, because we've made some strides, but I still believe that there's still backwards ass people in the military. I always tell people this, and then I'll let you answer the question. They always want to say, hey, thank you for your service. They think because we put a uniform on, that makes us a wonderful person. And I have to push back, and I say, if that was the case, those bastards that went to the Capitol on January 6th that were veterans would have thought about the uniform and not Donald Trump and what they were there for, which was a lie. So the uniform doesn't make you a good person. Inside you makes you a good person. If you're a racist person, or if you're a homophobe, or whatever you are, anti-Semite, you are like that. The uniform shouldn't make you like that. That's how I feel. But early on in your military career, how much homophobia did you see?
Well, I think, for me, the homophobia, the transphobia probably came out and was evidenced by the number of folks that treated me differently, that acted differently just because I started living authentically. So the person that I've known for 20, 30 years, and the service member is probably not as bad maybe as some of the spouses. I remember standing at a reception with a coworker of mine, and he was okay, but the wife was kind of hidden behind him, clutching his arm, and I don't know what she thought was going to happen, or if I had something contagious. But so that's kind of how I identify the homophobia and the transphobic folks. And I'm happy to say that I think with my generation, there's less and less of those people around, both in the military and out. And I'm extremely happy to see that the younger folks doesn't make, a bit of difference to them. They've been around people who are different. They're more accepting. Just have a totally different mindset about different people, whether it's the color of their skin or their orientation or their identity or what have you. And I think that's going to be very healthy for all of our military services. And for those folks that find themselves in the military in those type of situations, there's always the chain of command. If they have open door policies, if they're part of the problem, then you go to the equal opportunity roles. There are remedies for those, and I want to make sure that folks are out there. Now, it doesn't make your situation any better in the short term, but I've always been a believer it's not about me, it's about those who follow and the good that you can do for others by taking action and not looking the other way, or not just determined to put up with it and fight your way through alone. Reach out. Okay.
What we're going to do before we segue to the second half of the conversation today, which is just the fun random questions, we're going to take a short Hey folks, this is Bad Brad Berkwitt, the host of the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. And I want to talk to you about sponsorship. If you're interested in being a sponsor on the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show that features network guests and entertainers and people from all walks of life in business and other areas, reach out to me at ringsidereport2014@gmail.com. Again, that's ringsidereport2014@gmail.com. I'm finally in a position that I'm ready to take on sponsors. So, hey, reach out to me and let's get you on board. I want to talk to you about my book, Boxing Interviews of a Lifetime. If you watch my show, The Bad Brett Berkwitt Show, you know that I love doing 360 conversations with all types of people. Well, I made my bones in boxing over a quarter of a century ago, interviewing world champion boxers, people in the sport, and entertainers that love the sport of boxing, which led to my induction into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame in June of 2021. And that's the ring that you see me wear all the time on my show. Well, if you like to pick up my book, Boxing Interviews of a Lifetime, go to authorhouse.com. Again, that's authorhouse.com. And if you would like to get it personally inscribed or inscribe for somebody that you're sending to as a gift, you can reach out to me and we can arrange for something as well. Okay, we're now back. Sheri, we're going to go into the, like I said, the second half. These are just fun, random questions. Whatever pops in your head, that's the right answer. Okay?
Okay.
All right. First of all, what is your favorite genre of movies?
Oh gosh, probably military related. I think of Private Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe because of my father's connection to the European theater.
Okay. Do you have a movie that you could put in over and over again and watch it never gets old?
Well, there you go, Top Gun.
Top Gun. Okay.
Yeah,
Did you see the new one?
I have not, and frankly, I'm not much of a movie goer.
Okay.
But yeah, I still need to get out and see Oppenheimer though.
Yeah, I heard that was good. Okay. Do you have, it could be old or new, a favorite TV show that you never missed an episode?
Oh, I'm sure I probably missed some episodes, but I'm still trying to catch up on them. And I think it's like many other folks, it was MASH.
Okay. Great show. Great show.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the movie version?
I did not. No.
It was good. It was really, really good. Okay. Do you have a favorite musical band, or I don't know if you do music when you're playing golf or not, but that you like to listen to?
I would think my favorites can be classified as the doo-wop. You ever seen the doo-wop specials?
Of course.
The 60s,
PBS.
and 70s. The things that I've got on my favorites list are from back then, and I'm not ashamed to say that I've seen Peter, Paul, and Mary 6 times.
Love Peter, Paul, and Mary. Blowing in the Wind. Are you kidding me? Puff the Magic Dragon?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Off the top of your head, what is one of the most memorable childhood memories that you have?
Oh, childhood memories. Well, it wasn't childhood. Probably my most favorite memory is every night, and there were 3 of us that were grouped within 7 years. I had an older brother who's 7 years older, but he was out of the house, so there were just 3 of us. And childhood memories were probably getting up on Saturday morning watching cartoons, and at some point during the morning, my sister and my younger brother, and we would just realize that mom and dad's bed was open, and we would run screaming down the hall, big bed, and we would get on there and just jump around and use it as a trampoline, basically.
Okay. Do you have a favorite noise or sound you like to hear?
I won't say noise, I'll say music. And if you ever listen to the theme from MASH, from the TV show, that to me is very soothing. And I didn't realize really until, probably 15 years ago, that there were words to that instrumental. And if you have a chance to do that, hear that, look it up and listen.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I'm gonna YouTube it after we get off here. Now,
and it may come from the movie. I'm not sure, but
okay.
Yep.
Now flip that. Is there a sound, noise, or whatever that just you can't stand to hear?
My dog's barking. No.
No, don't talk about Maddie like that.
No. And I've got to go back to the first question. The sound that I really like is I'm in the flight path here near the airport, and our guard unit here just received I think they're up to 8 or 10 F-35s,
Mm,
and the sound of freedom is probably my favorite sound ever.
okay, that's a good one. Good one.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And sounds I don't like, probably, I don't know. Don't really have a good answer for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your favorite food?
I used to think it was pizza, but I like nothing better than just a 6 ounces of ground round rolled on an outdoor fire and served with either some salsa and chips or some acorn squash.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got to go back to pizza for a second because you're hitting on my 50% almost from my ancestry DNA and my Italian side. When you say pizza, what type of pizza? We talking New York slice? We're not talking this casserole here in Chicago.
No, you're not going to want to hear this then because I'm talking thin, ultra thin crust. And
no, that ultra thin is good. Ultra thin is good.
I'm a pretty simple individual. When I get pizza, I usually get pizza out of take and bake, and I get them half with ground beef, which is not really traditional because most are sausage. And the other half is part you're really not going to like. This pineapple.
I know. Oh God, we're ending the show. This show is over, Sheri. That's it. It's over. Pineapple. Oh no. Okay. What is your favorite vacation destination?
Oh gosh. I think, and a lot of this goes with memories that I have of my family. After my dad passed away, and my sister moved away, and I had a brother move away, and we would get together just at Christmas time at mom and dad's house. And I just came up one day and said, this isn't enough. I think we need to give some serious consideration getting together during the summer. So for years, we would get together in the summer and we would go to Door County, Wisconsin, which is in the peninsula. And it's just so lovely and quaint. And they have golf courses. So, 3 of us golfed. Usually in the mornings, and the afternoons belong, and the evenings belong to the kids. And we took turns being assigned who's responsible for making dinner. And it was a blast. Those are some of the greatest memories I have.
Okay. And we've talked offline about golf. I don't know why this name popped in my head. Was there a female player that was really good? Was her name Babe Dickerson?
Yes.
Was it back 50s? Was it 50s or 60s?
Oh, I think it was before that, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know why that name popped in my head. Okay. If you could meet one person from any time in history, any walk of life, dead or alive, who would you like to meet and what would you like to talk to them about?
So because he was a champion of what's near and dearest to my heart, and that's the ability of trans people to serve openly, it would be the late Ash Carter. And I've been in the room with him at the Pentagon on Pride celebrations. And I would really like, and he was a physicist, if I remember correctly. So I would really love to have had a discussion with him. And probably a close second to that would be Eric Fanning.
Okay.
The former Ash Carter's former chief of staff and the former Secretary of the Army, first gay Secretary of the Army.
Okay. If you could, in a few words, how would you sum yourself up as a human being, Sheri?
Oh boy, a few words. I like to think I'm smarter than I used to be. I like to think I'm a much better listener than I used to be. And I'm just so pleased of the progress we've made for trans rights, even though it doesn't sound like it, because we've got a lot of people standing in the way yet. But the fact that so many trans kids are coming out and are going to be able to live the vast majority of their lives authentically, as opposed to some of us late bloomers, the term I used before, just makes me an extremely happy individual.
Okay. And a final question, what is, because this is what this show is all about, what is your message or hope for humanity?
So we have to, if you believe in equality, and that's a big if, because there's a lot of people out there that I don't think that believe in that anymore. If you believe in the Constitution, and there's a lot of people out there, I think, by virtue of their behavior, have showed us they don't believe in that anymore. Realize the importance of our institutions and the need to be true to yourself, especially when it comes to a gender identity issue. Came with a great deal of cost for me, but I can tell you that the last 20 years of my life have been by far the happiest. And I hope it's that happiness that all of humanity can find and makelove.org.
Okay. If you would share, give the viewers where they can find you on social media.
Yes, I am on X or Twitter, and it's Sheri_Swokowski, SWOKOWSKI. I am also on Threads, and I am on Facebook, although not as much as I used to be. And if you have questions for me that I can shed some light on for you, I'm happy to give you my email as well. And that would be S as in Sam, WOKO, number 1, @gmail.com.
Okay. I'm going to close out with a few thoughts, and then I'm going to give you back the microphone and close out completely. First of all, I want to thank you again for coming on and sharing your story and answering questions for me. We had some really good conversations in DC, so I knew that this would be special as well. I appreciate you for that. I want to thank you for moving humanity forward, because you don't have to, but you choose to do it. As well, I want to say, and I'm sure you can handle yourself, but I'm still going to say this, because if I didn't say it, I wouldn't be my father's son. If anybody bullies you or there's any issues that I can help, because I don't, like I said, I don't tolerate that. I can't change people's hearts and minds, but the bullying, I won't tolerate it at all. Let me know. I'm a DM, a text away, because I will not stand for it. And I've had people reach out to me, and I have addressed those type of issues as well. If you have stuff that's coming up, I'd love to bring you back on. Small, it'd be a shorter segment, and anytime you need access to me, let me know. Just reach out to me. I have you on. We can talk about something you're involved in or something you want to get information out to, or if you know somebody that would like to come on the show and I can put my platform behind them. I'm always looking for guests to tell their stories, because it's about you. And in your case, I really enjoyed it, because I'm going to be honest with you. I've reached out to a lot of people in the community, and I can hardly get one person. And I'm talking about people that are out, not people that are, I would never make someone do something not comfortable with. But I can't get people to come on that I'm surprised, because like they're on Twitter and they're very vocal. I can't get them to come on. So I appreciate it. And it was great meeting you in DC, like I said, and thank you for your service. You made a point earlier, and I tell people all the time, you want to attack someone in the trans community. You think someone in trans is going to go into the military of all places because they want to put up with, I'm not saying all the military is bad, because it's not. There's segments of anything that's bad. But they're going to go in the military to put up with crap. No, they're going into the military because they want to raise their hand and take an oath to the Constitution and defend this country. So I'm glad that you mentioned that earlier. with all of that said, I want to give you back the microphone. Close out with whatever you want.
Well, thanks. And first and foremost, thanks very much for the opportunity to come out and share some facts. And I wrote a note here, and I'm going to read it here.
Okay.
The reason I came on, I learned a couple of new words during my doctoral course, but the one that got me the most was epistemology. And for those of you that may not know what that is, because I didn't know just a number of years ago, and really it's about what your show is all about, Brad. It's the investigation of what distinguishes justifiable belief from opinions. And I use that whenever I can. Again, opinions are great, but that's just what they are, is opinions. And the investigative tools using research and things that actually matter, and not just doing your own research. Google doesn't qualify in my eye. If you want to go out and do some studies and look at studies and learn about what's actually out there, I think that's really the best route. And I'm going to make a suggestion here about our special forces friend, Mike. Might be an individual for you to consider having on the show, because I think he's got some really entertaining and some profound stuff to share.
Yeah, you know what? I got him. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I shot the card when we were eating lunch at that pub before we flew out, or I flew out that Wednesday. I got his card. I got to reach out to him. Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay. Well, like I said, again, thank you for coming out. You're my sister in humanity, and I appreciate you. And like I said, I really, really enjoyed our conversations in DC, especially the last couple at the table. When you came in, you were a little bit further away, and then when you came, we sat with each other. I appreciate that, because I love meeting real people that aren't scared to speak up. I know that you're in the fight, doing your thing. I see your tweets on, and I call it Twitter. I refuse to call it X. I can't stand Elon Musk. But I see what you're going to the I don't know if it's a Capitol, but wherever you're going in Wisconsin to speak. I appreciate that. We need more people doing what you're doing, and you're not just talking. You lived it. It's a lived experience, but you also studied it, and you're talking facts. And that's the thing. There's so much doggone disinformation out there, Sheri. It just drives me nuts. We could do a whole nother show on just the disinformation, but thank you again.
It's about epistemology. Keep doing what you're doing, young man.
Okay. On that note, enjoy the rest of your day, and give Maddie a big hug for me.
I will do that.
Bye-bye.
Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Thanks.